to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Laura, you have some public announcements before we get into the agenda?
I do. I just want to make sure to invite everyone on March 7th at 9:30 a.m. We will have a ribbon cutting and a grand opening for the new Victoria Library. That'll be here at this building. And then the entire day will be filled with events that are all open to the public. If you have small people, come at 10:30 for 10 Penny Tunes. And they'll be performing in the kids area of the library, very popular children's entertainer. And then at 1:30, author David Housewright will be here in this room giving an author talk. Everyone I've talked to is very excited. David is a well-known author from Minnesota. He has many characters, I understand, set on Lake Minnetonka, or many stories set on Lake Minnetonka. We're expecting a great turnout for all of the events, and we'd love to have anyone join us.
And that date is March?
That date is Saturday, March 7th.
Thank you. Next, let's adopt an agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There were two modifications to items on the consent agenda, one to the claims roster and one slight modification to the item related to parks. Copies were passed out to the council and available on the table, but both were clerical corrections in nature.
The claims roster, what, you have that in front of you? Read the number that the correct number. I don't have.
The correct number for the grand total is $516,779.17. Thank you, Councilman Crowley, for catching that for us.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
And alerting us beforehand so we didn't have to do math here on the dais.
Well, let's go to the open, first no, let's adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We've adopted the agenda. Next is the open forum, where it's an opportunity for a resident to address the council on any topic not on the current agenda. Anybody wish to address the council? Seeing none, we have a visitor presentation, pretty special visitor.
Yes, we would like to invite or introduce to you Corporal Liz Gruenhagen with the Carver County Sheriff's Department. As you all know, we have a town deputy. We contract for our police services from the Carver County Sheriff's Office. And we have 3 deputies that are specifically dedicated to Victoria. But Corporal Gruenhagen is our primary face of public safety in Victoria. She is the one that takes care of any of the public relations type calls. She's here Monday through Friday, handling the daytime calls, networking with our businesses. She's the face that you see at Deputies with the Donuts. She's here attending staff meetings and functioning as a part of our team. And we wanted to make sure to give you a chance to meet her, new face around town.
And at least for the short run, she's going to be in attendance at our city council meetings.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome. Do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to impart to,
Wear your seatbelt, tell them that.
or you'll get pulled over?
That's all I got.
Thank you. We don't mean to put you on the spot, Liz. Thank you for your service. Consent agenda. It's modified, but we will approve these several motions or several items with one motion, unless somebody wishes to remove any of the items from the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to remove anything? If not, would someone make a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I adopted the consent agenda. The strategic plan, unfinished business.
Thank you. In front of you tonight is the 2015 strategic plan for consideration and adoption. And as you know, we started our strategic planning process with a focus group that was held on January 22nd, and then we met on January 31st as a leadership team with council and staff on January 31st. And we spent time using the feedback of the focus group as well as the ideas that we each brought with us from the conversations we'd had with people in the community, ideas we'd already been working on. And what we've arrived at is a list of 2015 strategic directions. They're divided up into 4 categories: embrace best practices, engage the community, develop Victoria, and strengthen and grow partnerships. And within those categories, there are several specific ideas that are outlined. And the strategic plan, the exercise that we went through that Saturday was framed in a positive manner. So it asked us to not so much think about all of the hurdles that we might have to go to achieve our goals, but what it might look like in an idealized version of both timeline and outcome. And so I had a couple of conversations with citizens who looked at the plan and wondered if the plan was too prescriptive, if we had come to ideas. And I just want to share that although we spent time in that positive manner looking at sort of a best version of how things might go, the idea that we were all committed to when we put this together is that we were going to list things that we were going to start looking at. Call attention to them now so that those people that are interested in getting involved, have an opinion, or want to develop an opinion along with us, will know what it is that we're going to be working on over the next year to 2 years and have a chance to raise their hand and say, please involve me. Should you choose to adopt this tonight, I also want to make sure we talked at length at previous meetings about the citizen survey and how important receiving that feedback is to us. And we're presently have those 1,200 surveys are out in the community waiting to hear, to get those results, which will be back in draft format in late April and final version in early May. And the intention that we talked about at our session and that I want to state here tonight is that as we get that feedback and we're considering each of these items, we will be incorporating what we heard in the citizen survey, as well as what we hear from our community groups, from our committees and our commissions in the consideration of each of those items. What we'd like to do tonight is have you consider adoption of this plan so that staff can start outlining further, how do we work on this timeline? Who else's timelines are we working with? How do we make our timeline work with them so that we don't miss any opportunities and we can be at the table where we want to be? I'm open for questions if you have any.
I mean, just by way of an example, this is not a plan to develop the 13.5 acres in any specific format.
Correct. We talked about some directions that we're leaning in, looking at a commercial use for that property, but nothing about this plan would prescribe that use. It's simply, I'm calling them conversation starters. These are the things that we want to spend time talking about.
And we're going to look on a quarterly basis at these items and others that may arise. So it's not a document that gets put on the shelf someplace, but it's something that's kept literally evergreen. throughout the year.
Absolutely, yes. And so we've also within this plan, we've set up those first quarterly meetings for April and July. We've proposed dates. At that first April meeting, we're proposing that Dr. Richard Fersman, who was the facilitator for the focus group and the strategic plan, would join us so that we could go over at that meeting in particular 2 things. We talked about refining our vision statements at our work plan, and we weren't able to complete that work at that time. A lot of that is, we were committed to the ideas expressed within the vision statement, but we wanted to do a little bit more work in refining what that vision statement is word for word. So we'd like to pick up that work in April, and we'd also like to talk about something I mentioned last time, which would be an accompanying work plan. There are a number of items that we know as staff or as council that we wanted to work on, that we need to work on. Code updates is one that comes to mind. We know we need to do some code updates and a codification project. Those kind of items, which are necessary but more routine, are not encapsulated here in the strategic plan. So in April, we'd like to talk about developing that list.
Comments or questions for Lori?
Yeah, I think, we probably all saw there was at least one pretty strong citizen response. And I think, to respond to that a little bit or to maybe clarify, from my participation and from the discussion that took place here at the last city council meeting, I believe that we were all unanimous that the citizen input survey would be really a linchpin of the detailed piece of the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
We talked in large buckets and directional, but as far as what the specific details and programs and plans that we would move forward on, we had no ability to do that, or we were withholding moving forward until we had that citizen input. And I think that's critical, just to say that again because of the reaction we have gotten. And I know there's an awful lot of information in this packet that I think is out on the city website, right? So anybody can look at that. So I guess I would like to reiterate the request for an executive summary that kind of boils that down and makes it clear, because I really want to avoid further misunderstandings. This has been a really positive experience, and I hate to put a negative spin on it because it was, you know, too detailed and too much information to really internalize casually. And also, there are a couple of things in here like where I could see, you know, are just ripe for misunderstanding, such as the pool decision made, right? And that shows in the May-June timeframe. But that really is recognition that there's an external organization, AKA the school district, which is making a decision on their timeline. And we more or less acknowledged it within the plan, but we didn't make that decision that we're either gonna build a pool or not, and we're gonna make that before we hear from the citizens. So I guess I just want to make that clarification and again reiterate that request for a good, concise summary.
It's maybe a slight exaggeration, but this document is a call to begin the analysis of several items.
Correct.
To begin the analysis. It's not to approve any final plan, or even any
Anything.
intermediate plan. Let's start the analysis.
Yes, and one of the pieces of feedback that we talked about at the last meeting was that some of the discussion that was encapsulated in the draft document, it really covered all of the discussion that was had either at our session or at the focus group. And so there were some ideas in there that came up and they weren't really discussed, they weren't really vetted out, but they were included in the document. And so what we did or attempted to do by dividing it into two documents was make that clear. Some of this is background information that simply includes all of the discussion we had. And some of it are things that we spent a little bit more time talking about. Yes, we're at least committed to looking into these things. We don't all agree on a direction, we don't have a decision, but we're committed to just looking into them. And so we will do some further work to put together maybe a one-page summary that talks about what our goals are and how we're going to go about those.
And related to this, there are no surprises in here. Everything in here is something that we've talked about sometime in the last 4 years. The decisions that are being made tonight, at least my interpretation of that, is that we're agreeing on a direction that these are the things that we want to study and learn more about and see if it's appropriate. And part of that study is continuing to take input from the citizens of Victoria and all of our constituents to determine what is prioritized. Should we pursue these? If we are to pursue something, should we pursue something?
I think the analogy that I use in terms of getting energy focused and where we spend the time and energy is if you think about the sun and the thousands and thousands of kilowatts that it beats down on us when we have it here in Minnesota. But, you know, the worst we can get is a sunburn, right? But that's it. And it's coming from very far away, and it takes lots of energy to do that. If you think about the energy in a laser, and it's only just a few kilowatts, and a laser can actually cut diamonds, and it can cut steel. That's what we're attempting to do here, is take all of the focus and get it into some very specific areas that we believe will best benefit the community. It doesn't mean the decisions are made, and as with anything strategic, when new information comes in, you examine that and you shift or you move or you do something with that is appropriate to what you're dealing with. It's not unlike what we've experienced the last few years with this building, with Public Works and with other areas. So really it's just getting the staff energy, because we don't have thousands of kilowatts of energy, and focusing it on the right things that we believe are best for the community.
Any other comments or questions? I'll make a motion that the Victoria City Council adopt the 2015 strategic plan as presented.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have adopted a strategic plan. New business, the 2015 park projects. There are two.
Yes, and Parks Director Ann Monkey is here to give you a staff report on this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This year, we have 2 park projects programmed within the CIP. One is Lakeside Estates Park, and the other is Bayfront Park. Lakeside Estates Park is about a 2.6 acre park that was acquired through the development of Wasserman. It sits just north of Marsh Lake Road and borders Lake Wasserman Estates and a private property to the west. The plan, as we move forward, will be to acquire some additional parkland to create a larger park for that area. But today, we'll be just focusing on that 2.6 acre park. The concept plan that we have consists of a basketball court, a shelter and a play area, and trails that connect to the neighborhood. In the future, we hope to incorporate a parking lot and a ball field, space area as we move forward. The second park is Bayfront Park. Bayfront Park is located just north of Steger Lake Lane in the downtown area, and this was acquired also through the development process. It's a relatively small park area, about 0.6 acres in size, that in concept anyway is kind of a plaza area or a trailhead that is somewhat of a focal point of that downtown area. And there have been quite a few concept or ideas thrown around, and we really want to get this one right. So as part of the park process that we go from planning to construction, we utilize engineering services for that, and they will provide concept plans, much like they have done for the Lakeside Estates. And we'll see that through the Lakeside Estates one will be seen from conceptual all the way to bidding and the construction process. And with Bayfront Park, we'll be just looking at gathering some concept plans that includes outreach to the businesses and the community to gather some information for final concept plans for that. Because of the size of the park, and I anticipate it not being very complex in nature, the city will be able to manage that project construction on its own. So we utilize engineering services from a pool of engineers, and we have worked with WSB and Associates on South Lake Virginia Shores Park and also Lake Bridge Park. They have provided excellent service to us, and Kara, I know, has gone through the task list and identified and looked at the hours and the costs associated with that, and feels comfortable with us moving forward with those costs associated with the project. The proposal from WSB for Lakeside Estates Park is not to exceed $29,375, and the Bayfront Park not to exceed $5,300. The funding from these two parks comes from our Park Improvement Fund. Lakeside Estates has an estimated cost of about $400,000, and Bayfront Park $100,000. So with that, staff is recommending moving forward with WSB for these two projects, and I am open and happy to answer any questions for you that you may have.
Fire away, council.
And question on the Bayfront Park. In that budget, is there any anticipation as to the total number of bike racks that would be available?
Not at, excuse me, not at this point in time. It will, when we flush out all the details and amenities that will go there, we'll have that included in the final concept plan.
Speaking for just myself, that if you come back and that includes 10 and we need 50, I'm willing to pay more.
Okay,
Okay.
Could you,
we'll note that.
Just
building on that comment, would you go through that diagram? My tired eyes, I couldn't make out much of the descriptive material on that. It looks like a wonderful park, but
Well, in this, it's interesting to know, it was, programmed when the Hartman Building and this building, well, the Hartman Building was in conceptual form, Terry Hartman brought over a concept of an idea of the Yellowstone Trail was supposed to have gone through this area. So that plays on a little bit of history as well. So he had, I think it was Westwood do just a real concept plan that included part of that Yellowstone Trail as it weaves through. It's really a paved area. I think within this plan, it had a fire pit, trees, seating areas. So that's where this one came from, as just a concept plan. But there was quite a story behind it as it was associated with the Yellowstone Trail, so.
So this very preliminary work here is compliments of the Hartman.
Correct, yes.
This may not be the final.
No,
based on
no.
what that-
So, yeah, what we'll do is provide all the information to our firm. Like I said, we'll have a couple, at least one or two meetings that we'll invite the community and businesses to talk about, what they envision for this very small piece of property in downtown.
Yeah, we have parks, and then we have parks, and this is a park that's going to get justifiably a lot of attention.
Correct.
It's terribly significant.
It is. Like I said, I see this as being a focal point for the downtown, and, we'd really like to do it right the first time, so.
Other questions? Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ann, can you bring up the GIS and just show how big of a footprint this will have?
Sure. Compliments of Kara.
Just so we can see it.
So if you walk downtown where the Boulder Wall is, that pretty much encompasses that area.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if it was further west or if it was just that little parcel.
And everything surrounded by it is owned by the Hennepin Regional Rail Authority, so, there's some potential for some additional things, in working with them. We'd like to put some benches and/or bike racks maybe out in that area. So I'll be working with them too, once we get down to the nitty-gritty.
Okay. And I would echo Mr. Crowley's request for bike racks, someone who often rides our bikes down to downtown, having to lock our bike up to a tree or have it lay in the middle of the sidewalk so we can watch them isn't the greatest.
Agreed.
And my other question on the Bayfront Park, or on the other park, I had seen that the parking lot was on the opposite end of the playground, and someone who's got 2 young kids with strollers and all of that, having to park there and then walk all the way through is lazy. Does that sound, it's not that convenient, and it seems, at least in the new park in our development, that most of the use is with the playground, and I don't even know if I've ever seen anybody use the ballpark. So I would think that I'd want to have the parking lot as close to the playground for the little kids as possible. So I don't know if that's something that we can incorporate, but I just don't want it to not get used because it's kind of a.
Sure, Councilmember Pavelko, one of the challenges that we have is that if you look at the dark line that is, Kara can kind of point to it, that's the only property that we have today. And with Marsh Lake Road being a county road, there's going to be certain access points off of that road that we'll be able to access. And this was about the closest that we could get for future expansion of the park. So because of the cul-de-sac, it'd be also a challenge to get a parking lot in off of there just because of the sheer size. So that was kind of why this was laid out the way it was.
It's
just a thought.
It's interesting because you stare at everybody has a different take. I thought, well, this is great because the park and especially the playground piece will be primarily walking traffic from the immediately adjacent neighborhood, and it segregates car traffic and parking from the little kid, tot lot area. So just different perspectives, but to me, it seemed like that made a lot of sense.
You can also imagine that homeowners number 1 and 4 would not be very thrilled with a parking lot right next to them.
That always is a challenge.
You know, this park, it looks, not surprisingly, unlike the Lake Ridge Park, and, I mean, do we ever go back to a clean sheet of paper and say, let's start over again, and what should be here, and what did you leave, what was left out of here, for instance, that could have been added, but you chose for whatever reason to not include it? I mean, Joe made the point that baseball fields are very seldom used, and
Well, and I think the one at Lake Bridge, especially because it's relatively new, so the seed is barely coming in yet. And I anticipate that will get used as it continues to mature, particularly with the ball field and also the soccer field, because I have groups, youth groups that are, you know, starving for practice time. So I anticipate as it continues to mature, it will get used. You know, we kind of, just from my perspective, when we start doing a little scratching work, you know, I look at what the neighborhood is going to have. You know, is it going to be single-family homes anticipating on kids? Is it an older neighborhood? You know, soon this year, we'll be looking at redoing a park in Deer Run. Deer Run has aged, the neighborhood has aged, so we're looking at more, I didn't,
Why are you looking at me?
I have 2 grandchildren who use that park a lot. Slide and climb, and Grandpa, watch me, oh my
You should
God.
see Tom on the swings.
so that certainly, as I said, aged, I didn't mean you. You know, we do look at the neighborhood and what we anticipate, and, you know, it will continually change as these parks get older. We will continually evolve and change based on who we anticipate in the neighborhood. You know, and the amount of space that we have to work with, you know.
Is the next amount of space added to this adjacent likely to be about the same as the 2+ acres?
Yeah, we're looking at it at in that neighborhood of 3 to 4 additional acres.
Isn't the baseball field and the parking lot, that's the second
Correct.
lot?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Oh.
only what's being built right now is what's on the left-hand side?
Correct.
And that's the two,
The
That's the
basketball court?
2.6 acres.
that's
the
two,
2.6.
okay.
So it's a lot bigger than I thought.
Just curious, the land adjacent to the second section, are there any plans at this point to develop that? Housing development?
The landowner doesn't have any immediate plans to develop it, but with development
Right.
coming around him, he is certainly talking to people.
And if an opportunity presents itself, we would certainly go in and try to obtain something adjacent to it as well.
Kind of a two-part question on this. One is, I think we have a couple of outdoor hockey rinks, is that correct? And do they get much usage? And if so, is any portion of this floodable as a recreational skating as a recreational skating rink?
Councilmember Striegel, we currently just have one outdoor rink right now. You know, and a lot depends on the weather. You know, last year, when we had all the cold, if we were open 13 days, I'd be surprised. This year, we had the rinks all ready to go in December, and then we had 40-degree weather. So then we weren't open again until probably the first part of January when it got cold again. So ice rinks have become, I mean, there's just a maintenance challenge. I know people like them. So there's always opportunities. One of the things you run into with flooding on grass is you kill the grass usually every single time you flood it.
You know, it looks about the right size.
Yeah. And that's always an
Basketball
option.
court. There's a way to do it on the basketball court without destroying the
Yep.
surface.
Yeah, and, you know, unfortunately, they're not very big, you know, basketball court's probably in that 100 by 50 range, which, you know, it could be certainly a small rink. Getting access to it with our vehicle to flood it is something that one has to consider. So those high maintenance items, you know, tennis courts, ice skating rinks, you know, we're always looking at opportunities and options for them, but they are an expensive component to have especially if you've got at least, a few options around town to do that in, so.
Thanks.
Two more questions, Mr. Mayor. Is parking allowed on that street that goes next to the park?
On south or north?
North in the development.
Yes. Yes.
And then my second, maybe this is just a comment, but when I look at these parks, I see all that green space and I just think of mowing. And I'm wondering, are we incorporating any design aspects so that we don't have to maintain, mow, spend time and money mowing stuff that we're not going to use?
When we look at the planning process, we always look at opportunities to not have to maintain them or to provide as minimal maintenance as possible. One of those projects that we just did was the water storage facility. We put a lot of low-maintenance grasses, a lot of trees and planting beds, but even those require some form of maintenance. But when you're looking at a 2-acre park, it's fairly minimal when it comes to mowing.
So how long would it take this park to be mowed when it's all done?
Hour and a half, maybe, with the big mowers, if that.
Thank you.
That's it. Anybody else, questions? Reminding us all that there's an additional agenda statement where it states the Bayfront Park cost, engineering cost from $5,500 to $5,300. There was a typo. Would someone like to make a motion?
If we could hold on 1 second.
We can hold on 1 second.
The last question that I had on this was relative to the park developer fees that came in and then how we parse that money out between construction and then future maintenance, upgrades, that kind of thing. So, I think, and then also connections. So for a given neighborhood, we collect a certain amount of money, but I don't think we can spend it all on building the park because we have to connect it to things and then we have to maintain it in the future. So do we have some formal process or some formula for how we allocate those funds?
I'll take a stab at this, I might need some help from Kelly, but when we, in this particular case, there were 3 or 4 developments that provided park dedication fees versus, in lieu of land, in order for us to get a larger neighborhood park in this area. So within every development, we do that, and we also then have a $250 recreational fee that is included, what did I say, 25,000? That'd be awesome.
You said 200.
Oh, 2,500.
We'll take 2,500.
I know,
Somewhere in there.
20,000 would be awesome. $2,500 per building permit. So what Kelly and I have worked on with the long-term financial plan was kind of anticipating those dollar amounts that are coming in with the development and then also with the future home development, and then looked at all our park projects that have to be completed over the years, and then have plugged those numbers in. So it's not really based upon a neighborhood or area-wide, it's more community-wide in nature that we look at those.
So I guess the short answer then is we're not taking all the money and spending it on building the park.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I move we authorize WSB and Associates to provide professional services for 2015 park projects. There are 2. Lakeside Estates Park not to exceed $29,375, and Bayfront Park in the amount of $5,300.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approve the engineering study. The new interchange at County Road 42 and Highway 212.
Thank you. The city of Chaska is pursuing funding through the governor's bonding bill this year for a new interchange at the intersection of County Road 140 and Highway 212. This is something that they have been contemplating through their Southwest Chaska Growth and Development Plan. which I included a link to in your packet, several different iterations of what development in this corridor might look like for them. City of Chaska has approached the Southwest Transportation Coalition membership, which includes the City of Victoria, looking for resolutions of support to endorse this project going forward. They're looking to get a hearing before the governor and the legislature so that the project can be considered for inclusion in the bonding bill. Support of this project would not obligate the City of Victoria to any sort of funding. We wouldn't be looking at the City of Chaska coming back and asking us to participate. But staff does feel that an interchange at County Road 140 and 212 would be very beneficial to the residents and businesses of Victoria, improving their access to 212 and facilitating development in our southern growth corridors, particularly at the intersection of County Road 10 and County Road 11, where we have future commercial development slated. If you have any questions, either Kara or I will be happy to take a stab at them.
Looks like my commute to work's gonna get a little slower.
A little slower? More
Yeah, I
people
go
on
through
212?
there And I don't have to slow down for the interchange right now.
That's a good point, yes. This isn't gonna,
Perhaps, Tom, you'd like to make a motion?
The right thing for the community.
Would you like to make a motion?
I can figure out the motion to make here. All right. I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation for adoption of Resolution -1511. A resolution supporting the City of Chaska's application to include County Road 140 interchange in the governor's capital bonding bill for 2015.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Hearing none, we're in favor of the motion. Reports of the city manager.
thank you. I just had 2 items I wanted to update you on. This morning, staff and Southwest Metro Chamber of Commerce hosted a meeting with Greater MSP, and the meeting was really more of a meet and greet to help us understand what the role that Greater MSP plays in our region is and how the City of Victoria can better partner with them. I won't go into great detail, but basically Greater MSP is an economic development organization that is largely funded through private capital, namely businesses that are interested in promoting the Twin Cities as a world-class place to live and do business. We're the 13th largest market in the country, but we don't have as much visibility as markets even smaller than us, their research has found. And I think we all know anecdotally, we know this is a great place to live, but when you travel or you tell people where you're from, you're often met with ooh, I don't know if I could do that. But we also know that once we get people here, they never want to leave. And so Greater MSP's mission in a nutshell is to make sure that these major world-class corporations know that this is a good place to do business, that they should grow and expand here. And they do that on behalf of the entire region. They were here to go through some of the tools that they have available that the City of Victoria can avail themselves of. Whether they have a project that we can partner on in our community or not, they have some really nice research tools that are available. They have a staff, they've purchased some data that we would not have access to were it not for our partnership with them. Carver County is a stakeholder, so they pay a very nominal amount of dues. The city itself does not pay anything to be affiliated with Greater MSP. But it was great to have them out, just to get on their radar, to meet them, find out who they are and how we can take advantage of their knowledge.
An example like HEI?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you know, HEI is one of our largest employers, and they're currently in bankruptcy. And while the city itself may not have many tools to help them through that, an organization like Greater MSP, they were able to tick off 3 or 4 calls that they would make right away. And so they connect them with resources that come from the state of Minnesota. They also will work with the business to find out if they are going to be liquidating, what kind of equipment is going to be remaining behind, what is their labor force made up of, and then in that worst case scenario where the business is going to have to cease to exist, how do they work with what's left here, that building, that equipment. If they have an accurate picture of what that looks like, they can use that to market to other specialty businesses, hopefully fill that space a lot quicker than we would otherwise. And then also working with the labor market. If those are employees that have enjoyed working in Victoria, this is a good commute for them, a good fit. How can we help find them other convenient workplaces? So it's a good resource to have.
Basically, if we're interested in commercial development, and we are, appropriate commercial development, this is it extends our reach considerably, potentially. I don't want to make, it's not the promised land by any means, but
Right.
it's certainly one step beyond putting a for sale sign out on a piece of property.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Bassa mentioned earlier, we don't have 1,000 kilowatts of energy to expend, so anywhere that we can look to partner and take advantage of other people's muscle and knowledge and hard work is great. So,
Two things, and you had one
two
other
things, yes. The other one, I'm sure everyone saw the announcement on Friday that the grocery store in Victoria is returning. We'll be returning under the banner of Victoria's Market. And I know we here at City Hall receive many phone calls and emails and sort of high fives on the street. Like, this is great news. We're all really excited about this. And the mayor and I were lucky enough to go over and meet the new general manager. Now, I hope I don't pronounce his last name incorrectly, but Will Jedlicek. He has a vast variety of experience in the food industry, the bulk of it working with Lancer Catering at the Como Zoo in St. Paul. And he's recently relocated back to Minnesota from running the Birmingham Zoo in Alabama. He gave us a tour of the store. We got to see the first glimpse of some of the remodeling that they're doing. I consider myself kind of a foodie, and the things that he talked about, the partnerships that he threw out, I was like, oh, I'm very excited about this. So they are targeting to be open by May 1st. If it's a couple weeks earlier, we won't hold it against them. But by May 1st, we should have an operating grocery store in Victoria. And they wanted us to make sure that we shared the reaction that they've gotten from the community so far has been really overwhelming. People have been reaching out to Will and welcoming him to the community. And like I said, just the positive buzz has been really awesome.
Any other reports?
I have one.
Lonnie?
Just a small one. I'm now a member of the liaison to the Park and Rec Committee. And at our meeting, it was announced that in January, our membership was over 1,000 for the very first time. So I think that's great news. And it continues to slowly increase as we go along. So that's great. And then also we added the Silver and Fit program, which is similar to the health reimbursement program that you get with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And Ann is working busily on Medica and getting them involved as well. So great offerings coming through the park, the rec center there. So
Any other from the council?
A question as much as anything. Several months ago, we talked about technology for recording the meetings, and I think video parsing was one of them that I think we kind of had unanimous support for. And I'm wondering if you can give us an update on where we are with that.
Sure. Our current videographer has been able to do some video parsing within the YouTube upload that we do. So it doesn't have the full functionality of the product that we demoed when we talked about it a few months ago. But you now, for the past, I want to say 3 meetings, if you go in and look, you are able to jump specifically to the item. And so we've increased the functionality of what we have available via YouTube. But we are still working, and I think we have slated to come back to you at the next meeting to look again at some of those more robust products for agenda parsing, and also to again talk about the level of detail that we want in our minutes. So it is still on our radar.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a question.
Joe?
Can I get an update on the Highway 5 project and just where we're at and what the Lake Bridge community can expect in the next few months?
The latest information I have is that they're scheduled to take bids the end of February 26th, I believe. So we're working on getting another meeting scheduled for, I think we're thinking later in March. There had been some discussion about a joint meeting with Waconia, but we're going to request our own meeting here, even though I think the issues in Waconia will take much more discussion because it'll be closed in downtown Victoria, but
Waconia.
downtown Waconia, sorry. I I guess the newest news, though, would maybe relate to what the proposed detours are. So originally, they had talked about using the same detour as the 2012 project, so 41 to 212. Instead, the official detour is looking like it's going to be County Road 11 going both directions. So you could either go north on 11 to 7, or you could go south on 11 to 10. There was a lot of people requesting that detour. So that's the latest information that I have, but certainly I expect I'll be getting more soon.
So break ground is end of May?
As soon as weather allows, so it'll be weather dependent.
Okay.
It's gonna be warm early this year.
So,
Tomorrow?
yeah. So
Please.
I think the biggest question that the community is having is sort of what are the details? And you're saying they're already taking bids in end of February?
Yeah,
So they have a plan.
yes.
So has that been shared? I haven't seen any updates since our last neighborhood meeting that they had back, last spring?
I think it was in the fall.
Was it the fall?
I don't remember. But I haven't seen final plans yet, but I guess it depends what sort of details.
Well, there was lots of, rumble strips, the west opening,
Yep.
the shoulders, there was a number of things. And there was talk around cattle crossings and
Yep.
you name it. And so I know in that last meeting, there was lots of questions, no
Right.
answers.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest thing is no one is aware of what the plan now is.
Okay.
Or if anything has shifted since then.
I think then maybe we'll want to think about having 2 meetings. We might want to do an open house and then another neighborhood meeting, because we're going to need to talk about detours and traffic impacts. That, we'll have to decide the timing, because some of that won't be known until the contractor's actually under contract. So we'll have to think through what that timing is, but I'll get a little more information and maybe bounce it off the 2 council people who live in the neighborhood to see what you think makes sense for timing.
So can I just ask straight up, are rumble strips included within city?
I haven't seen the final plans, but I haven't been instructed that it's anything different than what we had talked about where they weren't included within the city limits.
Thank
I
you.
think Diane probably would have alerted me if they changed that, but.
Yeah, I just wanted to make an observation, and I don't know if you all realize this or feel it. In my mind, I've felt kind of a transition that's been going on within the city and all of our activities over the last 6 months or so. And tonight, it all kind of came together, and it just kind of hit me like a hammer, and it's a good hammer. Do you feel the difference in tone and attitude of these meetings? I want to say that this is tremendously positive, and I want to thank staff for their hard work. I want to thank the citizens of Victoria, the majority of the citizens of Victoria, for their support. We're just getting going, and we will not be dissuaded.
And I said a couple of weeks ago, we are now a real city. And you can, I sense the vibe you're talking about. And you see it in the informal work sessions too, and not just formal with a camera on. It's the interactions on this floor are, people seem to really like each other. What a phenomenon. No, we're a real city now. Bob, do you have anything we didn't want to go over?
Well, I appreciate that. Just to follow up on those last comments, I probably spend as much time in city council buildings and chambers as any of you, a couple of different places a night, and I would be very poor at describing the aesthetics in here. I'm not good at that, but functionally, this is a great hall you've got here, and I congratulate you for that. You can hear each other, and you can see each other, and I can hear you and see you, and I can see things on the screen, and it's a very nice hall. So
And in the spring, when it's light out later, you might even be able to see some trees.
that's right.
Okay, make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.